Stepdad locked her out on graduation day, then a motorcade arrived because she won a national grant. I was still in my cap and gown when I realized my stepdad had changed the locks. Rain pelted my diploma as I stood there, homeless on graduation day, 18 years of his threats finally coming true. Then the first black SUV rounded the corner. Then another. Then 5 more. A presidential-style motorcade crawling toward our house, all because of the secret I'd been keeping. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome to today's story. Where are you watching from? Drop your location below. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, do it now, because what happens next changed my entire life in seconds. My stepdad's face appeared in the window, fury twisting his features as the motorcade stopped in front of our house. He had no idea I'd won the nation's most prestigious grant. No idea reporters were about to flood our lawn. No idea that the family secrets he'd buried for years were about to explode on national television. And absolutely no clue that the driver of the lead vehicle, a man I'd never met, would become both my greatest ally and an unexpected complication to my carefully planned escape. I clutched my soaking diploma tighter as the first car door opened. In that moment, standing locked out in the pouring rain, I had no way of knowing that by midnight, everything my stepdad had built would crumble, and everything I'd lost would return in ways I never imagined possible. For 18 years, I'd lived with a singular focus: escape. Every test I aced, every scholarship I applied for, every late night studying while my stepdad Jack Torrance ranted downstairs, it was all fuel for my exit strategy. My mom used to call me her little fighter before she got sick, before she married Jack, before she became a shadow of herself. Now, I fought alone. Olivia. My best friend Ellie Fredrickson's voice cut through the rain as she pulled up to the curb, leaning across to push open her passenger door. Get in before you drown. I slid into her beat-up Honda, my graduation gown dripping all over her seats. He actually did it. He changed the locks. Ellie's face hardened. She'd been my witness for years, the only person who knew what happened behind our perfect suburban facade. Your stepdad is a monster. But today's not the day he wins. She reached into her back seat and pulled out a garment bag. I brought the dress. You can change at my place. The dress, a simple blue number I'd hidden at Ellie's house so Jack wouldn't accidentally ruin it before the grant ceremony. A ceremony I'd kept secret from everyone except Ellie and my guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen. There early, I whispered, watching the motorcade slow to a crawl outside my house. The ceremony isn't for 3 hours. Maybe they want to do like a home interview or something for the feature. Ellie suggested, her eyes widening at the official-looking vehicles. What terrified me wasn't the motorcade's early arrival. It was knowing that Jack would now discover I'd won the Westfield National Science Grant, $250,000, and a guaranteed position at the country's top research facility. The grant I'd applied for using Mrs. Chen's address because Jack had lost every other college acceptance letter that had come to the house. He's going to try to take it, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. The money. He'll say he's entitled to it as my guardian. Ellie grabbed my hand. He can't. You're 18 as of last month. Legally, he has no claim. But we both knew legal boundaries meant nothing to Jack Torrance. Not the man who'd systematically isolated my mother from her family, who'd convinced her to put the house in his name for tax purposes just months before her cancer diagnosis, who'd made my life hell since I was 9 years old. What neither of us knew then was that the driver of the lead vehicle wasn't from the Westfield Foundation at all. As the door opened and a tall figure stepped out into the rain, I had no idea I was about to meet Ethan Stark, the investigative journalist whose own dark past would collide with mine in ways that would change both our lives forever. Who is that? Ellie whispered as we watched him approach my front door, press the bell, and come face to face with my stepdad. I don't know, I said, a strange feeling settling in my stomach. But I think we're about to find out. We need to get closer, I said, already opening Ellie's car door despite the downpour. Liv, wait. Ellie grabbed my arm, but I was already halfway out, drawn by some magnetic pull toward the confrontation unfolding on my front porch. The man from the lead vehicle stood tall against the rain, his dark suit already soaked at the shoulders. Even from this distance, I could see the tension in his stance as he faced Jack. My stepdad's body language was all too familiar, the puffed chest, the finger jabbing, the way he leaned into someone's personal space to intimidate them. "I don't care who you are," Jack's voice carried across the lawn. "There's no Olivia here. You've got the wrong house." The stranger didn't back down. "Mr. Torrance, I'm Ethan Stark with the Tribune. We have confirmation that Olivia Bennett resides at this address and—" "Bennett." Jack spat the name like poison. "She's a Torrance. And she's not available for whatever you're selling." I froze in the rain. My mother's maiden name, the name I'd used on my grant application, my real name, sounded foreign coming from Jack's mouth. He'd forced me to use his last name at school, on documents, everywhere. Hearing Bennett spoken aloud felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd thought was lost forever. Ethan Stark pulled something from his jacket, a press badge, maybe, and Jack's face transformed. I'd seen that look before. The mask slipping, revealing what lurked beneath. "Get off my property before I call the police," Jack hissed, but Ethan stood his ground. "Sir, your stepdaughter has won the most prestigious science grant in the country. We're here to interview her for a feature that runs tomorrow. The Westfield Foundation representatives are right behind me." He gestured to the other vehicles. "This is a tremendous honor." Jack's expression shifted so fast it gave me whiplash, from rage to a sickening, saccharine smile. "Well, why didn't you say so? There must have been a misunderstanding. Olivia's just being modest. We're incredibly proud. Please, coming out of this awful rain." My stomach dropped. I knew that voice, the public Jack, the charming Jack, the Jack who convinced everyone he was Father of the Year while making my life hell behind closed doors. "Liv," Ellie whispered urgently from the car. "What are you going to do?" Before I could answer, Ethan Stark's eyes found mine across the lawn. For a split second, something passed between us, recognition, though we'd never met. Then Jack followed his gaze, and when he saw me standing there in my soaked graduation gown, his mask slipped again. "There she is," he called out with forced cheerfulness, waving me over. "Olivia, honey, these people are here about your scholarship. Why didn't you tell us about this amazing news?" Every instinct screamed at me to run, but where would I go? The grant was my ticket out, my only chance at freedom. I took a deep breath and walked toward the house, toward Jack, toward the future I'd fought for. As I approached, Ethan Stark stepped between us, subtle but deliberate, and extended his hand. "Miss Bennett? Congratulations on your achievement. I'm Ethan Stark." His handshake was firm, his eyes intent on mine. "The foundation sent me ahead to prepare for the interview. They're very interested in your research on cellular regeneration in cancer treatment. The research inspired by my mother's death. The research Jack had mocked as a waste of time." "Thank you," I managed, acutely aware of Jack's eyes boring into me. "Why don't we get you dried off?" Ethan continued smoothly, "and then we can discuss the ceremony details. The foundation has arranged transportation for you." Before Jack could object, another car pulled up, this one bearing the official Westfield Foundation logo. A woman in a crisp suit emerged, carrying an umbrella and a folder. "Miss Bennett," she called. "I'm Diana from Westfield. We're so excited to present your award today. We brought the contract papers for you to sign before the ceremony." Contract papers. Papers that would put the grant money legally in my name. Papers that would fund my education and research far away from here. Jack's smile tightened. "Well, let's all go inside and get dry. We can sign whatever needs signing at the kitchen table." "Actually," Diana said, checking her watch, "we're on a tight schedule. The ceremony's been moved up due to the weather. We need Miss Bennett to come with us now to prepare." I watched the calculation in Jack's eyes, the public scene versus his control. "I'll just run upstairs and change," I said, moving toward the door. Jack blocked my path. "Your clothes are being cleaned, remember? Nothing suitable for such an important event." His message was clear, "You're not getting inside." "That's not a problem," Ethan interjected. "The foundation has arranged appropriate attire at the venue." Jack's jaw tightened. He was trapped in his own lie, with too many witnesses. "Well," he said finally, his voice dangerously soft, I'll just get my keys and accompany my daughter. As her guardian, I should be there for this important moment. Of course, Diana smiled. Though the contract will need to be signed by Olivia alone, as she's legally an adult. Something dark flashed across Jack's face. I'll just be a moment, he said, disappearing inside. Ethan leaned close to me, his voice low and urgent. Is there anything in that house you need? Anything important? The question caught me off guard. How did he know? My research. My laptop. My mother's. Where? My bedroom. Second floor, first door on the right. There's a loose floorboard under the bed. Everything's there. Without another word, Ethan turned to Diana. I forgot my recorder in the car. Back in a second. Then he slipped past Jack's closing front door and disappeared inside my house. My heart pounded as I stood in the rain, watching the door close behind him. What had I just done? Who was this man I'd sent into Jack's domain? And why did I feel, for the first time in years, like someone was actually on my side? 5 minutes stretched like eternity as I stood under Diana's umbrella, rain drumming against the nylon above our heads. Ellie had joined us, hovering protectively at my side while Diana explained the ceremony details. But my attention remained fixed on the front door, waiting for either Ethan or Jack to emerge. Is everything all right? Diana asked, following my gaze. We really should be leaving soon. Before I could answer, the door swung open. Jack appeared first, car keys jangling in his hand, that public smile plastered across his face. Behind him, Ethan emerged carrying a leather messenger bag I'd never seen before. All set, Ethan said casually, but when our eyes met, he gave me the slightest nod. My heart leapt. Had he actually found my hidden research? The flash drive with 3 years of data, my mother's journal, the acceptance letters I'd managed to salvage? I'll follow you in my car, Jack announced, moving toward his BMW. Diana checked her watch again. Mr. Torrance, the ceremony venue has limited parking due to the weather. The foundation has arranged transportation for all honorees and their families. You're welcome to ride with us. I could see Jack calculating. If he refused, he'd look unreasonable. If he accepted, he'd have to leave his car and his control. Fine, he conceded, locking his car again. Lead the way. The seating arrangement in the Foundation's SUV became its own silent battle. Jack tried to position himself beside me, but Ethan smoothly took that seat, leaving Jack to sit across from us next to Diana. Ellie squeezed my hand before heading back to her own car, promising to meet us at the venue. As we pulled away from the curb, Ethan discreetly slid the messenger bag between us. Your materials are secure, he murmured, his voice too low for Jack to hear over Diana's cheerful explanation of the ceremony schedule. Thank you, I whispered back, relief washing through me. Ms. Bennett, Diana continued, your research proposal was the unanimous choice among our judges. The potential applications for cancer treatment are remarkable. Jack's expression soured momentarily before he recovered. Yes, we're very proud. Olivia has always been dedicated to her studies. That's not what I heard, Ethan said casually, flipping open a small notebook. According to her teachers, Olivia has succeeded despite significant obstacles at home. The temperature in the car seemed to drop 10 degrees. Excuse me? Jack's voice was dangerously soft. Ethan met his gaze evenly. For the feature article, we interviewed Ms. Bennett's teachers, her guidance counselor Mrs. Chin, and several classmates. They all mentioned her extraordinary perseverance in difficult circumstances. My pulse raced. No one had ever confronted Jack like this before, subtle but direct, challenging the narrative he'd so carefully constructed. I'm not sure what you're implying, Jack said, his public mask slipping slightly, but Olivia has had every advantage in our home. Including being locked out today? Ethan asked, his tone still conversational. On her graduation day? Diana looked between us, confusion evident on her face. Jack's hands clenched into fists. There was a misunderstanding about keys, he said tightly. Nothing more. Of course, Ethan replied, making a note in his book. And the multiple reports from neighbors about shouting? The school counselor's documented concerns? The sudden withdrawal of Olivia's mother from her previous social circles? All misunderstandings too, I imagine. The air in the car became electric. I'd never seen anyone stand up to Jack like this, methodically, professionally exposing the cracks in his facade. For years, I'd been told no one would believe me over him. Yet here was Ethan Stark, a stranger, who somehow seemed to know everything. "I don't know what kind of tabloid you're running," Jack hissed, "but I won't have you slandering our family on what should be a day of celebration." Diana cleared her throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should focus on Olivia's achievement today. The personal background can be discussed another time." "Of course," Ethan agreed smoothly. "Though the foundation should know that Ms. Bennett plans to use part of her grant to secure independent housing immediately, as is her right as an adult recipient." Jack's face darkened. "That's not. It's standard procedure," Diana interjected. "The grant funds are deposited directly into an account in the recipient's name. How she allocates those funds is entirely her decision." I watched Jack's careful control fracturing. Everything was slipping away from him, his authority over me, his access to the grant money, his carefully constructed public image. "Olivia," he said, his voice honey-coated poison, "we should discuss this as a family before making any hasty decisions." "There's nothing to discuss," I said, finding my voice at last. "I turned 18 last month. The grant is mine. My future is mine." The look he gave me promised retribution, but for once, I didn't flinch. With witnesses present and my research secured, I finally had leverage. As we approached the venue, a grand hotel in the city center, I felt my phone vibrate. A text from Ellie, something weird. "A guy just stopped me in the parking lot asking questions about you and Jack. Said he's a detective." I showed the message to Ethan, whose expression remained neutral though his eyes sharpened. "Right on schedule," he murmured. "What does that mean?" I whispered. "Who are you really?" He leaned closer, his voice for my ears only. "Someone who's been investigating your stepfather for a long time. The grant story is real, but it's not the only reason I'm here." Before I could ask more questions, the car stopped. Diana stepped out first, then Jack, leaving Ethan and me momentarily alone. "Trust me," he said quickly. "When we get inside, stay close to me. No matter what happens or what he says, don't let him isolate you." "Why are you helping me?" I asked, the question that had been burning since he first appeared. Something flickered in his eyes, pain, recognition, determination. "Because 18 years ago, I was you," he said simply. "And no one was there to help me." Then the door opened, and we stepped out into a world of camera flashes and microphones, the media alerted to the presence of the youngest ever Westfield grant recipient. As reporters called my name and Jack tried to position himself beside me for the photos, Ethan's hand found the small of my back, guiding me safely through the crowd. For the first time in my life, someone was standing between me and Jack's control. And from the murderous look in my stepfather's eyes, he knew it too. The hotel ballroom buzzed with activity, foundation officials in formal attire, other grant recipients with their families, media representatives adjusting cameras and lighting. Diana whisked me away to a preparation room where, as promised, a selection of dresses awaited. I chose a simple emerald gown that reminded me of one my mother used to wear. "You look just like her," Jack said from the doorway, making me jump. I hadn't heard him approach. "You're not supposed to be in here," I replied, zipping up the dress. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This little game you're playing with that reporter? It ends now. You have no idea what you're getting involved in." "It's not a game. It's my life." I met his gaze in the mirror. "And I'm done letting you control it." "Control it?" He laughed, the sound chilling. "I saved it. You and your mother would have been nothing without me." She was dying, broke, desperate. "She was sick, not desperate," I corrected, anger flaring. "And she had an insurance policy that mysteriously disappeared after you married her." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Careful, Olivia. Today's little victory doesn't erase the fact that I'm still your legal guardian until midnight. One call to the right people, and I can have you committed for evaluation." Stress-induced delusions. "It would be a shame to miss your own award ceremony because you're under psychiatric hold." The threat hung in the air between us. It wasn't the first time he'd used it, the ultimate control card. With his connections at the hospital where he worked in administration, he could make it happen. Everything all right in here? Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression pleasant, but his eyes alert. Family discussion, Jack said dismissively. Private. Ms. Bennett is needed for photos, Ethan replied. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. I moved toward the door, but Jack caught my wrist, his fingers digging in painfully. We're not finished, he whispered. Actually, you are. Ethan's voice hardened as he stepped fully into the room. Remove your hand, Mr. Torrance, or I'll have security do it for you. For a tense moment, Jack didn't move. Then, slowly, he released me. This isn't over, he said, but he was looking at Ethan, not me. On that, we agree, Ethan replied evenly. As Jack brushed past us, Ethan guided me in the opposite direction, toward a quiet corridor away from the main hall. Are you all right? He asked, his professional demeanor softening. I nodded, rubbing my wrist. What did you mean earlier? About investigating Jack. Ethan glanced around to ensure we were alone. I'm not just a journalist. I work with a special investigative unit focusing on financial crimes and domestic abuse cases. Your stepfather has been on our radar for years. Years. I echoed, stunned. Why? Because your mother wasn't his first victim. Ethan pulled out his phone and showed me a series of photos, 3 women, all bearing a striking resemblance to my mother. Cynthia Weber, married 2005, died 2007. Patricia Donovan, married 2009, died 2011. And your mother, Elizabeth Bennett, married 2014, died 2016. My knees weakened. He was married before? 3 times. All to women with similar profiles, single mothers with health issues, modest assets, and insurance policies. All dead within 2 years of marriage under seemingly natural circumstances. The room seemed to tilt. Are you saying he? We can't prove it yet, Ethan said quietly. But the pattern is unmistakable. He targets vulnerable women, isolates them from family and friends, takes control of their finances, and then they die from complications of their existing conditions. My mom's cancer, I whispered. The doctors said it was responding to treatment, and then suddenly, it accelerated unexpectedly, Ethan finished. Just like the other women's conditions. I leaned against the wall, memories flooding back, Jack insisting on administering my mother's medications himself, the missing insurance documents, the way he'd prevented her family from visiting in those final weeks. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice barely audible. Because you're the only living witness to his behavior in the home. The only person who was there through your mother's decline. And because until today, we couldn't get to you without putting you at risk. Ethan's expression was grave. The grant is real, Olivia. Your achievement is real. But we made sure the foundation expedited the announcement to coincide with your graduation and your 18th birthday. So I'd be legally free from him, I realized. Ethan nodded. The detective who approached your friend Ellie is my partner. We have enough for a search warrant, but what we really need is your testimony. A lifetime of fear and silence pressed against my chest. He'll deny everything. He always does. No one ever believes. I believe you, Ethan said firmly. And so will the jury when they see the evidence we've gathered. But we need to move quickly. Once he realizes we're closing in. A commotion from the main hall interrupted us, raised voices, then a crash. We hurried back to find Jack surrounded by security guards, his face contorted with rage as he shouted at Diana. Absolutely unacceptable. I demand to see those contract papers before she signs anything. Diana stood her ground, the contract folder clutched protectively against her chest. Mr. Torrance, as I've explained, only Olivia can review and sign these documents. She's barely 18. She needs guidance. Jack's eyes found me as I entered, and his expression shifted instantly to concern. Olivia, honey, they're trying to rush you into signing away your rights. As your father. Stepfather, I corrected, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room fell silent. In all my years under his roof, I had never publicly contradicted him. Jack's smile tightened. Of course, technically. But in my heart. In your heart, I'm nothing but a complication, I said, stepping forward. Just like I was to Cynthia Weber and Patricia Donovan. The color drained from Jack's face. Behind him, I saw Ellie enter the hall with a man who could only be the detective she'd mentioned. "I don't know what nonsense that reporter has been filling your head with," Jack said, his voice dangerously low, "but you're making a scene. We'll discuss this at home." "No, we won't," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Because I'm not going home. Not with you. Not ever again." Jack lunged toward me, but security intercepted him. As they restrained him, his mask finally shattered completely. "You ungrateful little bitch," he snarled. "After everything I've done for you, you think you can just walk away? There is no way. I'll find you wherever you go." The detective stepped forward, badge in hand. "Jack Torrance, I'm Detective Ryan Miller. We'd like to ask you some questions about the deaths of your previous wives." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Jack's face contorted, first in shock, then in calculated innocence. "This is absurd. I'm being framed." He looked around wildly, his gaze settling on me. "She's always been unstable, delusions, paranoia. Ask anyone. She needs help, not encouragement." But his performance was crumbling. The foundation officials, the other recipients, the media, everyone was witnessing his transformation from concerned stepfather to raging abuser. "Mr. Torrance," Detective Miller continued calmly, "we have a warrant to search your residence and your office at Mercy Hospital. Your cooperation would be appreciated." At the mention of his office, something changed in Jack's expression, a flicker of genuine fear. "You can't," he whispered. "You have no right." "We have every right," Miller replied, producing the warrant, "including access to all medical records of your deceased wives and any patients under your administrative supervision." Jack's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal's. Then, with a sudden burst of strength, he broke free from the security guards and bolted toward the exit. He didn't make it 3 steps before Ethan tackled him to the ground. As police officers swarmed in to take Jack into custody, Diana approached me, contract still in hand. "Perhaps we should postpone the ceremony," she suggested gently. I shook my head. "No. I've worked too hard for this moment. I won't let him take it from me too." She nodded in understanding. "Then let's proceed. The foundation stands behind you, Miss Bennett." As Jack was led away in handcuffs, still shouting about conspiracies and ingratitude, Ethan returned to my side. "It's not over," he warned quietly. "The investigation is just beginning. There will be questions, testimonies, evidence to review." "I know," I said, watching Jack disappear through the doors. "But for the first time, I'm not facing it alone." Ethan's expression softened. "No, you're not." In that moment, surrounded by strangers who had witnessed my stepfather's true nature, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my mother fell ill, the weight of secrecy lifting, the possibility of justice, and the first fragile tendrils of freedom. As Diana called the ceremony to order and the audience took their seats, Ellie squeezed my hand. "You did it," she whispered. "You're free." But looking at Ethan's serious expression as he conferred with Detective Miller across the room, I knew the truth was more complicated. Jack's arrest wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of uncovering how deep his crimes really went. And somehow, I knew my mother's death was only the tip of the iceberg. The next 48 hours passed in a blur. The grant ceremony continued despite the chaos, and I accepted the award with shaking hands, delivering a speech I barely remembered afterward. The media coverage exploded, not just about my research, but about Jack's arrest and the investigation into his past. By morning, reporters camped outside Ellie's house where I'd taken temporary refuge. "They found something," Ethan said, his voice tense as he paced Ellie's living room. He'd arrived at dawn, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. "In his office at the hospital. Miller called me an hour ago." "What is it?" I asked, clutching my coffee mug like a lifeline. Ethan hesitated, glancing at Ellie who hovered nearby. "It's bad, Olivia. Worse than we thought." "I can handle it," I insisted. After years of Jack's abuse, I thought nothing could shock me anymore. I was wrong. "Medication records," Ethan said finally. "Altered dosages, missing inventory, falsified signatures. Not just for your mother, but for dozens of patients under his administrative oversight." The mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. He was poisoning them? Accelerating their conditions, Ethan corrected grimly. Subtle enough to avoid detection, increasing pain medication to dangerous levels, substituting treatments, delaying critical care. The pattern matches all three of his wives' declining health trajectories. "Oh my God," Ellie whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "There's more," Ethan continued. "They found financial records. Life insurance policies, property transfers, hidden accounts. He's been systematically targeting vulnerable patients, especially those without close family, and positioning himself to benefit from their deaths." The room spun around me. "How many?" "At least 17 cases they can document so far, going back nearly a decade. Your mother was just one of many." I sank onto the couch, memories flooding back. Jack's insistence on being present during my mother's doctor appointments, the way he'd volunteer to pick up her prescriptions, his convenient friendship with her oncologist who always seemed to defer to Jack's medical administration experience. "I knew something was wrong," I whispered. I tried to tell her doctors, but no one would listen to a teenager over a respected hospital administrator. Ethan sat beside me, his expression grave. "This is why your testimony is crucial. You witnessed his behavior firsthand. You can connect the dots that others missed." "I'll testify," I said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes to make him pay for what he did to my mother." "To all of them." My phone buzzed with an incoming call, an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Miss Bennett." A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "This is Patricia Donovan." My blood froze. That's impossible. "Patricia Donovan is dead." "No," the voice replied. But Jack Torrance wanted everyone to believe I was. Ethan's head snapped up at my words. I put the phone on speaker. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking. "I faked my death," Patricia explained. "It was the only way to escape him. When I realized what he was doing to me, the manipulated medications, the isolation, I knew I'd never be free unless he thought I was gone." "How?" I managed to ask. "I had help, a nurse who noticed discrepancies in my chart. We staged a medical emergency, falsified the death certificate. I've been living under a new identity in Canada since then." Her voice softened. "I tried to warn your mother, Olivia. I sent anonymous letters, but they were always intercepted." The letters. I remembered finding torn envelopes in the trash, Jack dismissing them as crazy fan mail from his hospital work. "Why are you contacting me now?" I asked. "Because it's not over," Patricia said urgently. "Jack has contingency plans. People who work for him. The moment I saw the news about his arrest, I knew you'd be in danger." As if summoned by her warning, Ellie's front window shattered. Something metallic clattered across the floor, a canister spewing thick smoke. "Get down," Ethan shouted, pulling me to the floor as the room filled with choking gas. The front door splintered open. Through watering eyes, I glimpsed dark figures entering, faces obscured by masks. Not police. Not media. "Run." Ethan pushed me toward the back door, placing himself between me and the intruders. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing Ellie's arm as we fled through the kitchen. Behind us, I heard thuds and grunts, Ethan fighting to buy us time. We burst into the backyard, scaling the fence into the neighbor's property. Sirens wailed in the distance, but help would come too late. "My car," Ellie gasped as we reached the street behind her house. "The keys are in my pocket." We piled into her Honda, Ellie's hands shaking so badly she could barely start the engine. As we peeled away from the curb, I looked back for any sign of Ethan. There was none. "Who are they?" Ellie demanded, her voice high with panic as she sped through residential streets. "Jack's insurance policy," I realized, Patricia's warning echoing in my mind. "He has people on the outside, people who'll make sure no one testifies against him." My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "Safe house. 1742, Riverside Drive. Come alone. Destroy this phone." "It could be a trap," Ellie warned when I showed her. "Or it could be our only chance," I countered. "Jack's network is bigger than we thought. We need help." "What about Ethan?" Tears streaked Ellie's face. "We can't just leave him." The weight of guilt crushed my chest. Ethan had put himself in danger to protect me, just as he'd been doing since the moment he arrived at my house in the rain. We'll call Detective Miller, I decided. Tell him what happened. He can send help for Ethan while we get somewhere safe. The call to Miller was brief and frantic. He promised to dispatch officers to Ellie's house immediately, but his next words chilled me to the bone. The hospital records are gone, he said. Someone accessed the system last night and wiped everything we found. The physical evidence from Jack's office has disappeared from the evidence locker. We're looking at a major breach. That's impossible, I whispered. He's in custody. He made a call yesterday to his attorney, Miller explained. We monitored it, but it must have contained some kind of code or signal. Olivia, listen to me. Without those records, your testimony becomes even more critical. You're our only living witness who can connect all the pieces. If I lived long enough to testify, what about the safe house text? I asked. Not from us, Miller said grimly. We were planning to move you to protective custody this afternoon, but someone leaked the schedule. Don't go to that address. It's almost certainly a trap. After arranging a new meeting point with Miller, I destroyed the phone as instructed, not because I trusted the mysterious text, but because I couldn't risk being tracked. What now? Ellie asked as we abandoned her car in a shopping mall parking lot and continued on foot. We meet Miller at the library in 30 minutes, I said, scanning the crowded street nervously. Until then, we stay in public places, surrounded by witnesses. But as we navigated through downtown, a terrible realization dawned on me. The grant ceremony photos were everywhere on news sites, social media, store displays. My face was now recognizable to anyone looking for me. We need to change how we look, I told Ellie, pulling her into a department store. 20 minutes later, we emerged transformed, my long dark hair hidden under a short blonde wig, Ellie's distinctive red curls concealed by a brunette bob. Sunglasses and different clothes completed our disguises. As we approached the library, I spotted Miller's unmarked car in the designated location. Relief flooded through me, until I noticed the driver's slumped posture. Wait, I grabbed Ellie's arm, pulling her behind a parked van. Something's wrong. From our hiding place, we watched as a man in a maintenance uniform approached Miller's car, checked the motionless detective, then spoke into a radio. They got to Miller, I whispered in horror. What do we do now? Ellie's voice trembled. With our police contact compromised and Ethan missing, we had nowhere to turn. Jack's network was clearly extensive, with reach inside law enforcement itself. The grant money, I realized suddenly. It was deposited yesterday. We can use it to get away, somewhere Jack's people can't find us. But they'll track any withdrawal, Ellie pointed out. She was right. Any financial transaction would leave a trail. My phone, my real phone, not the one I destroyed, vibrated in my pocket. A text from Ethan's number. Don't trust anyone in uniform. Meet at the place where your mother took you for your 9th birthday. Come alone. My 9th birthday, the last one before my mother met Jack. We'd gone to the old lighthouse on the point, just the two of us. It was our special place, one I'd never mentioned to anyone except my research journal. I breathed. Ethan read it when he retrieved my things from the house. There's an entry about that lighthouse. It could still be a trap, Ellie warned. They could have forced that information from him. It's the only lead we have, I said. And if Ethan is alive and free, he's the only person who might be able to help us now. The decision tore at me, trust this message and potentially walk into a trap, or run with no plan and no resources while Jack's network closed in around us. I have to go, I told Ellie. But you don't. This is my fight, not yours. Ellie's expression hardened. Don't even start with that. I'm not leaving you. They're looking for two girls together, I argued. Will be easier to spot. And if something happens to me, someone needs to know the truth about Jack, about his network, about all of it. Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded reluctantly. Promise me you'll be careful. We hugged fiercely, both knowing it might be the last time. 24 hours, I said. If you don't hear from me by then, go public with everything. Contact every news outlet, every social media platform. Make so much noise they can't silence you. As Ellie disappeared into the crowd, I headed toward the coast, toward the lighthouse and either salvation or a trap that would ensure Jack's secrets died with me. The sun was setting by the time I reached the point, casting long shadows across the empty parking lot. The lighthouse stood silhouetted against the darkening sky, just as I remembered from that birthday so long ago. No cars. No people. Just the wind and the distant crash of waves against the rocks below. I approached cautiously, every sense alert for danger. The lighthouse door stood slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. "Ethan?" I called softly, pushing the door open wider. The interior was dark except for a faint glow from the spiral staircase leading to the top. I hesitated at the threshold, Patricia's warning echoing in my mind. Then I heard it, a muffled groan from above. Someone was up there. Someone injured. Against every instinct screaming for me to run, I began to climb the stairs toward the sound, toward whatever waited for me at the top of the lighthouse where no one would hear me scream. Each step up the spiral staircase felt like a heartbeat, echoing in the hollow chamber of the lighthouse. My hand traced the cold stone wall, guiding me upward as the light grew stronger and the groaning more distinct. I paused at the final turn, gathering my courage. If this was a trap, I was walking straight into it. If it wasn't, if Ethan really was injured and needed help, every second of hesitation could cost him his life. "I'm armed," I called out, the lie hopefully convincing enough to give any attackers pause. No response except another pained groan. I took a deep breath and rounded the corner into the lighthouse keeper's room. Ethan lay on the floor, his face bruised and bloody, one arm bent at an unnatural angle. A makeshift bandage soaked with blood wrapped around his thigh. But his eyes, alert and relieved, found mine immediately. "You came," he whispered, attempting to sit up before wincing in pain. "Alone." I rushed to his side, kneeling beside him. "What happened? Who did this to you?" "Jack's cleanup crew," he managed, his breathing labored. "Professional. Military background, probably. I got away, but not before they made their point." He gestured to his injuries. "They wanted information about you. About what evidence we had. Did you tell them?" I couldn't help asking. A ghost of a smile crossed his battered face. "Nothing they could use. But they're good, Olivia. They've already compromised the investigation, destroyed evidence, accessed police communications. We can't trust the official channels anymore." I helped him into a more comfortable position, using my jacket as a pillow. "Detective Miller is alive," Ethan finished. "But sedated. They'll make it look like he fell asleep on duty. Professional embarrassment, not criminal assault. These people know how to cover their tracks." "Who are they?" I asked, examining his leg wound. The bleeding had slowed, but he needed medical attention soon. "Jack has connections to a private security firm called Sentinel," Ethan explained. "They specialize in problem-solving for wealthy clients. Some of their operatives are former military or intelligence. They're essentially mercenaries with corporate backing. And they're working for Jack? How could he afford that?" Ethan's expression darkened. "That's what we've been investigating for months. Jack isn't just a hospital administrator who married and murdered wealthy women. He's part of something bigger, a network that targets vulnerable patients, manipulates their care, and profits from their deaths. Insurance fraud on an industrial scale. The scope of it staggered me. And the hospital never noticed?" "Some did," Ethan said grimly. "Nurses, doctors, administrators who spotted irregularities. They were silenced, fired, discredited, or worse. Your mother wasn't just Jack's victim because of her insurance policy. She was getting too close to the truth." "What?" I whispered, my world tilting again. "Your mother was a hospital volunteer coordinator," Ethan continued. "She had access to patient records, volunteer schedules, medication logs. According to our sources, she started noticing patterns certain volunteers always assigned to specific patients who later died unexpectedly. All patients with substantial assets and minimal family connections." My mother's voice echoed in my memory. "Something isn't right at the hospital, Liv. The numbers don't add up." I dismissed it as the confusion of her illness, the side effects of her medication. But she'd been uncovering a conspiracy. That's why Jack targeted her, I realized, nausea rising in my throat. Not just for her insurance. To silence her. Ethan nodded painfully. And when she got sick, it gave him the perfect cover to accelerate her decline while maintaining his grieving husband act. Rage and grief collided inside me for my mother, for all the victims, for the years I'd spent under Jack's control while he continued his crimes. So, what do we do now? I asked, wiping away angry tears. If the police are compromised and the evidence is gone. Not all of it, Ethan interrupted, reaching painfully into his pocket. He withdrew a small flash drive. I made copies. Hospital records, financial transactions, communication logs. Everything Miller found before it was deleted. But it's not enough without testimony, your testimony, and hopefully Patricia Donovan's. You know about Patricia? She contacted me months ago, Ethan admitted. She's the one who put us onto Jack's operation in the first place. She's been gathering evidence from the outside while we worked from within. Hope flickered, a small flame in the darkness. So we still have a chance to bring him down. If we can get this evidence to the right people, Ethan confirmed. People outside Jack's sphere of influence. Federal authorities, not local. A sudden noise from below, the creak of the lighthouse door, froze us both. Someone's here, I whispered, panic rising. Ethan pressed the flash drive into my hand. Take this. If anything happens to me. Nothing's happening to either of us, I cut him off, scanning the room desperately for weapons, exits, anything that might help us. The lighthouse keeper's room offered little, an old desk, some maintenance equipment, a narrow window overlooking the cliff and ocean below. The only exit was the staircase we'd climbed. Footsteps echoed from below, steady and unhurried. Whoever was coming wasn't trying to hide their approach. I grabbed a heavy wrench from the maintenance tools, positioning myself between Ethan and the staircase entrance. Olivia? A woman's voice called up. Ethan? It's Patricia. Relief flooded through me, until Ethan grabbed my wrist, his expression wary. Wait, he whispered. We need to be sure. How do we know it's really you? I called down. A pause, then, your mother loved sunflowers. She kept a vase of them by her hospital bed, even when the nurses said they weren't allowed. She said they reminded her that light always finds a way through darkness. My breath caught. No one could have known that detail except someone who had actually visited my mother in the hospital. Let her up, I told Ethan, lowering the wrench. The woman who appeared at the top of the stairs was nothing like I'd imagined. In her early 40s, with short gray-streaked hair and alert eyes, Patricia Donovan carried herself with the cautious posture of someone who had spent years looking over her shoulder. You're hurt worse than you said, she told Ethan, immediately kneeling to examine his wounds. From her bag, she produced a first aid kit far more comprehensive than a typical civilian would carry. Former ER nurse, she explained, catching my surprised look. Old habits. As she worked on Ethan's injuries with practiced efficiency, she filled us in on her movements. I've been monitoring Jack's network since I escaped. When I heard about your grant and his arrest, I knew they'd activate their contingency protocols. I was already on my way when you called. How did you find us? I asked. I didn't find you, she corrected. I found them. Sentinel has a standard operating procedure for situations like this. I recognized the pattern and guessed they'd check significant locations from your past. You've been watching the lighthouse? Ethan asked through gritted teeth as she set his broken arm. Patricia nodded. This and 3 other locations. I spotted their surveillance team an hour ago, but they pulled back suddenly. Something's changed in their orders. What does that mean? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. It means Jack has escalated the situation, she said grimly. They're not just trying to silence witnesses anymore. They're cutting their losses. The hospital, Ethan realized, his face paling beneath the bruises. If they can't recover the evidence or silence the witnesses, they'll destroy everything, Patricia finished. Patient records, financial documents, the entire paper trail. Probably with a fire that will be ruled as accidental. There are patients in that hospital, I protested. Hundreds of them. They'll evacuate, Patricia assured me. Sentinel doesn't do mass casualties, too much attention. But they'll make sure nothing incriminating survives. When? Ethan demanded, struggling to sit up despite his injuries. Patricia checked her watch. Based on their protocols tonight. Probably during shift change when security is most distracted. We have to stop them, I said immediately. With what? Patricia challenged. The three of us against professional operatives? Ethan can barely stand, and neither of you is training for this kind of situation. We don't need to fight them, I argued. We just need to expose them. If we can alert federal authorities, get media attention. They monitor all official channels, Patricia countered. Any warning through normal routes will be intercepted. A plan began forming in my mind, desperate, dangerous, but possibly our only option. What about abnormal routes? I asked. The grant ceremony made me news. People know my face, my story. What if we use that? Ethan caught on immediately. A public statement. Too visible to suppress. Exactly, I said. We go to the hospital ourselves, not to fight, but to be seen. I use my new public profile to force attention where they don't want it. It's risky, Patricia warned. You'd be walking right into their territory. Which is why they won't expect it, I countered. They think we're hiding, running. They won't be prepared for us to show up at their doorstep with cameras rolling. Cameras? Ethan questioned. I pulled out my phone, not the burner I destroyed, but my personal phone that had been blowing up with media requests since the ceremony. Every reporter in the city wants an exclusive with the girl whose stepdad was arrested at her grant ceremony, I explained. What if I give them something better? The girl who uncovered a massive conspiracy at the city's largest hospital. Understanding dawned on their faces. We'd need to move fast, Patricia said, already repacking her medical kit. And we need a secure way to transmit the evidence to federal authorities simultaneously, so even if we're intercepted, the information gets through. I have contacts at the FBI, Ethan said. People outside the local jurisdiction who won't be compromised. And I have the perfect way to ensure we can't be silenced, I added, an idea crystallizing. The grant ceremony wasn't just covered by local news. It was live-streamed by the Westfield Foundation to their global network of scientific institutions. I showed them the Foundation's app on my phone, with its prominent Connect Live feature for grant recipients to share their research progress. If I initiate a live stream through their platform, it goes out to thousands of scientists, researchers, and academic institutions worldwide. Too distributed to shut down, too credible to dismiss as a hoax. For the first time since I'd arrived at the lighthouse, hope flickered in Ethan's eyes. It could work, he admitted. But you'd be putting yourself directly in harm's way. I've been in harm's way my entire life, I said quietly. At least this time, it would be my choice. For something that matters. Patricia studied me with newfound respect. Your mother would be proud, she said simply. She tried to fight them too, in her own way. The mention of my mother strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about exposing Jack anymore. It was about finishing what she had started, uncovering the truth about the hospital, the patients, the entire network of corruption that had ultimately claimed her life. We need to get Ethan to a secure location first, I decided. He needs medical attention beyond first aid. I know a doctor who operates off the grid, Patricia offered. Someone who helps people who can't go to regular hospitals. Domestic violence survivors, undocumented immigrants. Go, Ethan insisted. Both of you. I'll only slow you down. Not a chance, I replied firmly. We do this together or not at all. The flash drive stays with you, insurance in case something goes wrong at the hospital. As Patricia helped Ethan to his feet, supporting his weight against her shoulder, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For years, I'd lived in fear of Jack's power, his connections, his ability to control every aspect of my life. But now, knowing the truth about my mother, about his crimes, about the network he served, that fear had transformed into something else. Determination. Purpose. The absolute certainty that whatever happened next, I would no longer be a victim. Let's go, I said, leading the way down the spiral staircase. We have a hospital to save and a conspiracy to expose. Behind me, Ethan's voice was quiet but resolute, and justice to deliver. For your mother. For all of them. As we emerged from the lighthouse into the gathering darkness, the wind carried the distant wail of sirens from the direction of the city. Something was already happening at Mercy Hospital, and we were racing against time to stop it. Patricia's car, an inconspicuous sedan with tinted windows, ate up the miles between the lighthouse and Mercy Hospital. The city skyline grew larger through the windshield, emergency lights flashing in the distance. Something's definitely happening, I said, checking social media on my phone. Reports of a security incident at Mercy. They're evacuating patients. Right on schedule, Patricia muttered, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. They'll clear the building, then stage whatever accident they've planned. In the back seat, Ethan worked his phone one-handed, his broken arm stabilized in a makeshift sling. My FBI contact is scrambling a team, but they're at least an hour out. We're on our own until then. I pulled up the Westfield Foundation app, my finger hovering over the live stream button. Once I start broadcasting, there's no going back. Everyone will see whatever happens next. Wait until we're inside, Patricia advised. We need to be past security before they know what we're doing. As we approached the hospital, the chaos became evident. Ambulances lined up at the emergency bay, patients in wheelchairs and gurneys being loaded into transport vehicles, staff directing the evacuation with the practiced efficiency of disaster drills. How do we get in? I asked. They'll have the entrances controlled. Patricia pulled into a service alley behind the hospital. Staff entrance. During evacuations, they're focused on getting people out, not keeping people in. She parked behind a laundry truck and popped the trunk, revealing a duffel bag. From it, she produced hospital ID badges and scrubs. You've been planning this for a while, Ethan observed as she helped him into a doctor's coat that would conceal his injuries. 3 years, Patricia confirmed, handing me nurse's scrubs. Ever since I died. I always knew this day might come. Disguised as hospital staff, we approached the service entrance where harried employees were wheeling equipment and supplies to waiting vans. Keep your head down, move with purpose, Patricia instructed. Act like you belong. We slipped through the door amid the confusion, the hospital's interior a controlled chaos of flashing emergency lights and evacuation announcements. Security guards directed staff toward exits, too overwhelmed to scrutinize 3 more healthcare workers moving against the flow. Where are we going? I whispered as Patricia led us confidently through back corridors. Administration, she replied. 5th floor. That's where Jack's office is and the main servers for patient records. We took the service elevator, avoiding the crowded main lifts. As the doors closed, Ethan leaned heavily against the wall, his face pale with pain. You should have stayed behind, I told him worriedly. He shook his head. Not a chance. I've been tracking this case for 2 years. I'm seeing it through. The 5th floor was eerily quiet compared to the evacuation frenzy below. Most administrative staff had already left, leaving darkened offices and empty corridors. This way, Patricia directed, leading us toward a section marked Hospital Administration. As we rounded the corner, voices drifted from an open office door, tense, professional, discussing something in clipped tones. Patricia held up her hand, signaling us to stop, then peered carefully around the edge. She pulled back immediately, her expression grim. 3 men. Sentinel operatives. They're in Jack's office, accessing his computer. Destroying evidence? I whispered. No, Ethan said, his voice tight. Transferring it. They're not just covering tracks, they're gathering intelligence before they burn everything down. We need to stop them, I said, reaching for my phone. I'm starting the live stream. Patricia caught my wrist. Not yet. We need to get closer, capture what they're doing on camera. Otherwise, it's just us making claims without proof. How? I demanded. We can't just walk in there. A slow smile spread across Patricia's face. Actually, we can. She pulled a hospital security badge from her pocket, more official than the staff IDs we were wearing. I have friends in low places, including a sympathetic security guard who owed me a favor. She outlined her plan quickly, simple but audacious. We would walk right in, using the evacuation as cover, claiming to be securing sensitive patient data before the building was cleared. They won't expect direct confrontation, she explained. Their training is for covert operations, not public challenges. And if they recognize us? Ethan asked. That's when I hit the live stream button, I said, positioning my phone in my scrub's pocket with the camera peeking out. The moment anything goes wrong, we go live to thousands of witnesses worldwide. With our plan set, we straightened our disguises and approached Jack's office with the confident stride of hospital staff on official business. "Excuse me," Patricia called out professionally as we entered. "Security sent us to secure the patient databases before final evacuation. Fire department's orders." The three men inside turned, all wearing hospital maintenance uniforms, all with the same military straight posture that marked them as imposters. One was connected to Jack's computer, another monitoring a tablet, the third standing guard by the window. "Area's already secured," the guard said smoothly. "You can head back down." "We have direct orders," Patricia insisted, moving further into the room. "Administrator access only for the patient encryption protocols." I followed her lead, keeping my face neutral while positioning myself to capture the computer screen with my hidden phone camera. What I saw confirmed our suspicions. They were downloading massive amounts of data while simultaneously setting up what looked like an incendiary device beneath the desk. The man at the computer frowned, studying Patricia more closely. "Do I know you?" A flicker of recognition crossed his face, the moment we'd been dreading. "Now," I whispered, pressing the live stream button in my pocket. The Westfield Foundation app chimed loudly, announcing, "Live broadcast beginning to 4,782 connected institutions." Everything happened at once. The guard lunged toward me, but Ethan, despite his injuries, intercepted him with a shoulder block that sent both men crashing into a filing cabinet. I pulled out my phone, holding it up to capture the scene while backing toward the door. "This is Olivia Bennett, broadcasting live from Mercy Hospital, where operatives from Sentinel Security are destroying evidence of a massive patient exploitation scheme." The man at the computer abandoned his download, reaching inside his maintenance jacket. Patricia moved faster, slamming a heavy medical textbook from Jack's shelf into his face with surprising strength. "The hospital evacuation is a cover," I continued, my voice steady despite the chaos. "These men work for my stepfather, Jack Torrance, who has been systematically targeting vulnerable patients for financial gain." The third man grabbed for my phone, but I ducked under his arm, keeping the camera focused on the computer screen showing the file transfer in progress. "They're stealing patient records before destroying the originals," I narrated as Patricia grappled with one attacker and Ethan struggled with another. "This conspiracy involves hospital administrators, security firms, and a network that has been operating for years." The live stream counter ticked upward rapidly, hundreds, then thousands of viewers joining every second as Westfield scientists and researchers around the world tuned in to the unexpected broadcast from their grant recipient. The guard broke free from Ethan and pulled out what was unmistakably a gun. "Shut it down," he ordered, aiming at my phone. "Now." I kept broadcasting, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "They're armed. They're threatening us to stop this transmission. This is happening live at Mercy Hospital, 5th floor administration." "Last warning," the guard growled. Suddenly, the office door burst open. Detective Miller stood in the doorway, his service weapon drawn, a bandage visible on his temple. "Police, drop your weapons." Behind him, a team of officers flooded the room, quickly subduing the Sentinel operatives who found themselves outnumbered and exposed. "Detective," I gasped in relief, still broadcasting. "How did you?" "Your friend Ellie," Miller explained, holstering his weapon as his officers secured the scene. "Smart girl. When she couldn't reach you, she came directly to my captain with everything. Bypassed me entirely in case I was compromised." Ellie appeared in the doorway, her face lighting up when she saw me. The livestream alert came through on my Westfield app. I knew you'd find a way to expose them. As the police secured the Sentinel operatives and evidence technicians began documenting the scene, I continued broadcasting, making sure every moment was captured for the thousands now watching worldwide. "The device under the desk," I told Miller, pointing to the incendiary setup. "They were planning to destroy everything." Bomb squad technicians were called in, the evacuation perimeter extended, and the full scale of the conspiracy began to unfold in real time both for the authorities and for my growing audience. "Ms. Bennett," Miller said, approaching me with uncharacteristic deference. "We've received calls from the FBI, Homeland Security, and 3 international law enforcement agencies in the past 15 minutes. Your broadcast has triggered the biggest interagency response I've seen in 20 years of police work." The live stream comments section was exploding with messages from scientists, doctors, and researchers around the world, many identifying similar patterns at their own institutions, others offering to analyze the data we'd exposed, still others demanding investigations into patient care protocols globally. What had begun as an attempt to expose Jack's crimes had uncovered something far larger, a worldwide network of patient exploitation that crossed borders and jurisdictions. As medical teams arrived to properly treat Ethan's injuries and secure the evidence, I finally turned to face the camera directly. "My mother died in this hospital 3 years ago," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "She was trying to expose what was happening to vulnerable patients. Today, we finished what she started. This isn't just about my stepfather anymore. It's about a system that views patients as profit centers rather than people." Patricia stepped into frame beside me, her first public appearance since her death years ago. "My name is Patricia Donovan," she announced. 3 years ago, I faked my own death to escape Jack Torrance and this network. I'm here to testify about everything I've witnessed and to help identify other victims and perpetrators." The hospital's fire alarm suddenly blared, not part of the evacuation protocol, but a new urgent signal. "Fire on the 3rd floor," someone shouted from the corridor. "It's spreading fast." Backup plan, Ethan realized, now being treated by paramedics. They had contingencies in place. Miller immediately began coordinating with fire response teams, ensuring all evidence from Jack's office was secured before evacuation. "We need to get out," he told us urgently. "The building's not safe." As smoke began to fill the corridors, we made our way toward the emergency stairwell, my live stream still broadcasting every moment. The fire, clearly set as a last-ditch effort to destroy evidence, was spreading rapidly through the administrative wing. Outside, the night sky glowed orange with flames as fire trucks surrounded the building. News helicopters circled overhead, drawn by the emergency and the viral livestream that had already been picked up by major networks. Safe on the ground, I continued narrating as FBI agents arrived and took command of the scene, securing both the Sentinel operatives and the evidence we'd exposed. "Ms. Bennett," a federal agent approached, showing his credentials. "I'm Special Agent Carter with the FBI's Healthcare Fraud Task Force. We've been investigating similar cases across 5 states, but we've never had evidence this concrete before. Your broadcast just blew the lid off a conspiracy we've been tracking for years." "What about Jack?" I asked, suddenly remembering the architect of my personal nightmare. "My stepfather, is he still in custody?" Agent Carter's expression darkened. "There was an incident during transport to the federal detention center. The vehicle was ambushed. 2 officers injured. My blood ran cold. He escaped." "No," Carter said firmly. "He was extracted by the same organization that sent these operatives. But now that we've captured their team and secured their communications." He gestured to the Sentinel operatives being loaded into federal vehicles. "It's only a matter of time before we track him down." As if on cue, Miller approached with his phone extended. "You're going to want to see this." On the screen was a traffic camera image from a highway heading north, Jack in the back seat of a black SUV, his face clearly visible as he glanced nervously out the window. "Facial recognition just flagged this," Miller explained. "Border Patrol has been alerted. Every law enforcement agency in the region is looking for that vehicle." For the first time since this began, I allowed myself to breathe. Jack might have escaped temporarily, but he was running with nowhere to hide, his network exposed, his allies captured, his crimes broadcast to the world. I turned back to my livestream audience, now numbering in the millions as news organizations picked up and rebroadcast the feed. "My stepfather, Jack Torrance, is currently fleeing justice," I announced. "But thanks to everyone watching and sharing this broadcast, there's nowhere left for him to hide." The truth is out, and no amount of money or influence can put it back in the shadows. As federal agents secured the scene and firefighters battled the blaze Jack's associates had set, Ethan approached me, his arm properly splinted now, his face still bruised, but his eyes bright with triumph. "You did it," he said simply. "You finished what your mother started." "We did it," I corrected, including Patricia, who stood nearby giving her statement to federal agents. "All of us together." The Westfield Foundation representative who had been with me at the grant ceremony somehow found me in the chaos, pushing through the emergency responders to reach my side. "Ms. Bennett," Diana said, her expression a mix of shock and admiration. "When we awarded you the grant for your cancer research, we had no idea you'd end up exposing one of the largest healthcare fraud conspiracies in history." "Neither did I admitted. But now that it's exposed, my research becomes even more important. Understanding how medications can be manipulated to harm patients is the first step to creating safeguards to protect them." Diana nodded solemnly. "The Foundation is prepared to expand your grant funding in light of these developments. Your work has taken on global significance overnight." As dawn broke over the smoldering hospital, news arrived that Jack's escape vehicle had been intercepted at a roadblock 50 miles north. He was back in custody, this time in federal hands, with no friendly local connections to exploit. The conspiracy he'd been part of was unraveling rapidly as investigators followed the digital trail we'd exposed. Hospital administrators were being questioned, financial records examined, patient histories reviewed for suspicious patterns. Standing amid the emergency vehicles, watching federal agents carry boxes of evidence from the partially burned building, I felt a weight lifting, not just the fear of Jack that had dominated my life for so long, but the burden of my mother's unsolved death, the questions that had haunted me for years. "She would be so proud of you," Ellie said, appearing at my side and squeezing my hand. "Your mom. She'd be absolutely bursting with pride." "I know," I said, and for the first time, I truly believed it. "And she'd be grateful to everyone who helped bring the truth to light." I turned to Ethan, who was speaking with federal agents nearby, his journalist's instincts still sharp despite his injuries as he connected dots and provided context for the investigation. Our eyes met across the chaos, and something passed between us, understanding, respect, and perhaps the beginning of something more. He had recognized my situation because he'd lived through something similar. He had fought for justice because no one had fought for him. In that moment, standing amid the wreckage of Jack's conspiracy, I realized that my life was no longer defined by what I was running from, but by what I was running toward: truth, justice, and the research that might one day prevent others from suffering as my mother had. The grant that had brought me here, the achievement Jack had tried to control and exploit, was now a platform for something far greater than I had ever imagined. As the sun rose fully over the horizon, casting long shadows across the emergency scene, my phone buzzed with a notification. The Westfield Foundation live stream had been viewed by over 12 million people worldwide and had triggered investigations at hospitals in 27 countries. What had begun with me standing locked out in the rain on graduation day had culminated in a global awakening to a conspiracy that had claimed countless lives. And though the road ahead would be challenging, testimonies to give, evidence to analyze, a trial to face, I was no longer walking it alone. 1 year later, the courtroom fell silent as I approached the witness stand. After months of depositions, evidence hearings, and procedural delays, Jack Torrance's federal trial had finally begun. As the prosecution's key witness, my testimony would set the tone for everything that followed. I caught Ethan's eye in the gallery as I was sworn in. His encouraging nod steadied my nerves. Beside him sat Patricia, Ellie, Detective Miller, and a row of families I'd come to know well over the past year, relatives of Jack's victims who had been searching for answers long before I knew the truth. "Ms. Bennett," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant." For the next 3 hours, I recounted everything from my mother's marriage to Jack to the graduation day when everything changed. My voice remained steady, even when describing the darkest moments. This wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to every victim of Jack's network, and I owed them the strength to tell it clearly. Jack sat at the defense table, his once imposing presence diminished by the prison jumpsuit and the weight of overwhelming evidence against him. When our eyes met, I no longer felt fear, only pity for a man whose life had been dedicated to exploiting the vulnerable. No further questions, the prosecutor finally concluded. Jack's attorney declined to cross-examine me, a strategic decision that spoke volumes about the strength of the prosecution's case. The evidence we'd uncovered that night at the hospital had opened floodgates. 17 former Sentinel operatives had taken plea deals, providing testimony against the organization's leadership and clients. Hospital administrators from 6 states had been indicted. Financial records had revealed a network extending into insurance companies, pharmaceutical distributors, and even regulatory agencies. As I stepped down from the witness stand, the judge called a recess. In the courthouse hallway, Ethan handed me a bottle of water. "You were brilliant," he said, his voice warm with pride. Over the past year, our relationship had evolved from allies in crisis to something deeper. After months of working together on the investigation, me providing context for the patient records, him connecting the journalistic dots, we'd gradually allowed ourselves to acknowledge the connection that had been building since that rainy day outside my house. "The foundation called," he continued, walking me toward a quiet corner. "They want to feature your research at the international conference next month. Apparently, your work on detecting medication tampering has global security implications." I smiled, still adjusting to my new reality. The expanded grant funding had allowed me to establish a dedicated research lab focused on developing protocols to identify and prevent the kind of medication manipulation Jack's network had perfected. What had begun as a personal quest to understand my mother's accelerated decline had evolved into a mission with the potential to save countless lives. "Did you tell them I'll only attend if my research partner is invited too?" I asked. Ethan laughed. "Patricia already received her invitation. Turns out a presumed dead nurse with first-hand experience of medical exploitation is quite the draw for a healthcare security conference." Patricia had become an invaluable collaborator, her clinical experience complementing my theoretical research. After testifying against Jack and his network, she had reclaimed her identity and nursing license, dedicating herself to patient advocacy and safety protocols. "What about you?" I asked Ethan. "Any word on the book deal?" His investigative series on the hospital conspiracy had won journalism's highest honors and sparked a bidding war among publishers eager for the full behind-the-scenes account. "Final contract came through this morning," he confirmed. "But I told them I won't publish until after all the trials are complete. This story deserves the proper ending." The courthouse doors opened, and Ellie emerged, her expression triumphant. "You're not going to believe this," she announced, rushing toward us. Jack's attorney just approached the prosecution about a plea deal. "What?" I gasped. Jack had maintained his innocence throughout the proceedings, despite the mountain of evidence against him. "Apparently, the FBI found his offshore accounts," Ellie explained. "All the money from the insurance scams, the kickbacks from Sentinel, everything. He's offering full cooperation in exchange for asset forfeiture instead of seizure. He's trying to protect his money," Ethan translated, disgust evident in his voice. "It doesn't matter," I realized. "Either way, he's admitting guilt. The victims' families will get closure without having to sit through months of trial. And they would receive compensation." The judge had already ruled that recovered funds would be distributed to victims' estates and families as restitution. My mother's insurance policy, the one that had mysteriously disappeared after Jack married her, would finally fulfill its intended purpose of funding my education and future. As we returned to the courtroom for the judge's ruling on the plea offer, I felt a strange sense of completion. Jack's admission of guilt couldn't bring back my mother or the other victims, but it validated their experiences and our fight for justice. The judge accepted the plea with additional conditions: no possibility of parole, full cooperation with ongoing investigations into the broader network, and a public statement of responsibility. Jack would spend the rest of his life in federal prison, his empire dismantled, his name synonymous with one of the largest healthcare fraud conspiracies in history. When court adjourned, reporters swarmed the steps outside, calling my name and thrusting microphones forward. In the year since my Westfield livestream had gone viral, I'd become an unexpected public figure, the young scientist who had exposed a criminal enterprise while still in her graduation gown. Just one statement, I told Ethan as we navigated through the media crowd. Then we're celebrating with everyone at Ellie's place as planned. He nodded, taking his place slightly behind me as I approached the microphones. Though he'd helped me prepare for these moments, he always insisted that this was my story to tell. Today, justice was served not just for my mother, but for all the patients who were exploited by Jack Torrance and his network. I began, my voice carrying across the courthouse steps. But our work isn't finished. The systemic vulnerabilities that allowed this conspiracy to flourish still exist in healthcare institutions worldwide. I outlined the patient safety initiative that had grown from my research, a collaborative effort between the Westfield Foundation, regulatory agencies, and healthcare providers to implement new safeguards against medication tampering and patient exploitation. What began as a personal search for answers has become a movement for transparency and accountability in patient care, I concluded. My mother believed that light always finds a way through darkness. Today, we've proven her right. As the questions began, Ethan gently touched my elbow, our signal that we'd given enough time to the media. We made our exit, joining Patricia, Ellie, and the others waiting in a private area. Ready for something a little more cheerful? Ellie asked, linking her arm through mine as we walked toward the parking lot. Definitely, I agreed. After months of depositions, evidence reviews, and trial preparation, we all needed the celebration she'd planned. The gathering at Ellie's apartment was everything we needed: food, music, laughter, and no discussion of court proceedings or hospital conspiracies. Just friends who had become family, celebrating not just the legal victory, but the bonds that had formed through our shared experience. As evening fell, I stepped onto Ellie's balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. The city lights sparkled below, so different from the view I'd had growing up in Jack's controlled environment. Ethan joined me, leaning against the railing. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about my mom," I admitted, wondering what she would make of all this. "She'd be amazed by what you've accomplished," he said confidently. "Not just exposing Jack, but everything you've done since. Your research, the safety protocols, the foundation work." "I hope so." I gazed at the horizon, where the first stars were becoming visible. Sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed in a year. From being locked out on graduation day to testifying in federal court. "Speaking of change," Ethan said, his tone shifting slightly. "I've been meaning to ask you something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out not a ring box, as I momentarily feared. Our relationship was still too new for that leap, but a key. "My lease is up next month," he explained. "And that research position at Westfield's main campus you've been considering would put you in the same city where my paper's headquarters is located. Are you asking me to move in with you?" I clarified, a smile tugging at my lips. "I'm asking if you want to find a place together," he corrected. "Somewhere new for both of us. A fresh start." The offer represented everything I'd fought for: independence, choice, a future defined by possibility rather than fear. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined standing here, considering building a life with someone who had seen me at my most vulnerable and still looked at me with such respect. "On one condition," I said, taking the key. "Wherever we live needs space for a home office. Patricia and I are starting a patient advocacy consulting firm, and I'll need somewhere to work when I'm not in the lab." His face lit up. "Already factored into the budget. Along with a spare room for when Ellie visits, which she insists will be often." From inside, Ellie's voice called us back to the celebration. Before we rejoined the others, I took one last look at the night sky, silently thanking my mother for the strength she'd instilled in me, the determination that had carried me through darkness into this new beginning. The journey hadn't ended with Jack's conviction. In many ways, it was just beginning. The research inspired by my mother's death would continue. The safety protocols born from our investigation would evolve. The connections formed through shared purpose would strengthen. What had started with me standing alone in the rain, locked out and seemingly powerless, had transformed into a network of allies dedicated to protecting the vulnerable. The grant that arrived in that motorcade had opened doors I never imagined, to justice, to purpose, and ultimately to healing. As Ethan and I rejoined our friends inside, surrounded by laughter and possibility, I realized that the greatest victory wasn't Jack's downfall or even the exposure of his network. It was this, the reclaiming of my future, the honoring of my mother's memory, and the knowledge that sometimes, when darkness seems most overwhelming, help arrives in unexpected ways, even in a motorcade on graduation day. The end. What an incredible journey this has been. From that rainy graduation day to a whole new life of purpose and possibility. I hope you've enjoyed following Olivia's story as much as I've enjoyed sharing it. What was your favorite part? The courthouse showdown? The hospital livestream? Or maybe the relationships that formed along the way? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more stories like this one, make sure you've hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for coming along on this emotional ride.